outside because fixed sensors. There's nobody here. So maybe I will go away. Well, I'm on live here now. Are there people there? Are there people there? It's a managed broadcast.
Yes, it's a new thing you have to
And I
go
pushed
through.
that and it didn't do nothing.
You click it, manage,
Is
or
it-
that. I didn't want to start it.
Oh my gosh. You couldn't walk me through what it was going to do?
I didn't know it was going to do that. That's brand new. It didn't used to do that.
Everybody's saying, howdy, Wayne. Hello, Wayne. Everybody say, hey, Trevor, tell your dad what's about to happen when it's supposed to happen, the way it's going to happen, that you don't know what's going to
It's a
happen.
new thing.
I
It's
said
never done
stay
that.
in the room so I would know. That was
3
basically-
hours ago?
No. About 5 minutes ago, I said, why don't you stay here to make
I
sure
didn't
that
hear
it's
you
going to
say
work
that.
right, and you shut the doors and you walked away.
No, you told me close the doors.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there you go.
We'll
Yeah, we'll look at it together later. Well, because I already started here. Everybody's here. So, we are here again. It is Trevor's fault. Yes, it is. So last week, obviously the live wouldn't work on the computer. So I told Trevor, hey, there's this new thing coming up on there. We have to reset or do something. There's something's connected to it. And the screens are different. And he came in, and then I walked in the room about 10 minutes ago, and I said, well, it still says some of the same things, Trevor. Are you sure it's going to work? No, it's going to work. Don't worry about it. So I sat there till 4 o'clock and then pushed all the buttons. And it's asking me all kinds of questions to do stuff. And I'm like, I don't understand what is happening here. What the hell? And then I'm trying to point out to Trevor that it's not working, and he's not answering. So then I just grab my phone, figure I'm not going to wait till 4:10. So I just decided to come out here and do this, and just on my way through as I was going live here, trying to get on, telling him, and he's trying to tell me it'll work till he went in there and looked at it, and he's like, well, I don't know what it's doing. I don't know what that is. I don't know. So it's something different he's going to have to show me. So there will be a learning experience this weekend, which is unfortunate, but I get to smoke while I do live. So there you go. But it's harder to see what everybody says, and I got to follow. The weather is really, really nice. It's 75 degrees, a little partly cloudy, but it's been really nice, 75 to 80 degrees. However, Christmas will be damp because it's supposed to rain Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday next week. So we will have a wet Christmas. Flagstaff, it's going to be too warm, so it appears there's going to get rain as well. So no white Christmas, it'll be a wet Christmas. But I'm fine with that. The worry is we were going to have a fire out back, and I was going to cook steaks. I'm still going to have a fire out back and cook steaks. It's just going to be how I'm going to go about it. So I like this better. I always liked it doing this way, but it was much easier to see everything and deal with everything in there, and I'm sitting down. I liked doing it in the truck. That was fine, but each to their own. I like the other screen, the flip the other way too, though. So it allows me, it's more comfortable, but I'm here. Merry Christmas, Wayne. Did you go to the museum on Saturday? No, I was way too lazy. I got up and I said, no, I'm not. I got some stuff to do around here, and that was it. So it was one of those days where you're like, I was going to the museum, there's a bunch of different things I had to do, and I just decided all those things, I was just gonna stay home. I don't know about anyone else, but I'm so not a fan of December because there's always things to do, and you're running in and out, and everybody's got things going on, and there's Christmas parties, and there's this and that, and we've just been through schedule hell of people in and out of here doing stuff. And it was Saturday, and I realized I got other things here to do, and I just want to do those. So see, and at least you can smoke. That's right. See, yeah, in Howdy Wayne said hi. I saw that. Yeah, you do Christmas on New Year's. Well, you're doing New Year's on Christmas. I don't know. So, yeah, Christmas will be Christmas. So, it'll be when it gets here. Hello, everyone. Finally home on a live session. There you go. So, but yeah, it's just so hectic. I think everybody's in that same boat. Is like you got other things to do, and a lot of things are wrapping up the end of the year, and you're just trying to take care of things, and you're trying to get to things, and every plan gets sidelined by something else. Trevor, even today, he had to take his Bronco in for its first oil change, and he gets down there for his appointment, pulls up, and they tell him, oh, we're having our Christmas party. We're going to be about an hour before anybody's here to take the Bronco. So then he had to go off and find some place to have lunch until they'd take the truck. So it's just that time of year. So not angry about it, just, yes, I just look at the priorities, and a number of things needed to be done. So, but got all the lights up and the stuff in the yard and all that. And then we had those people going through the neighborhood that were breaking in people's cars. People leave their cars unlocked, and people were checking door handles, a group of 4 of them, and they were going through people's cars and taking things and stuff. And I don't know where. I see this used to be Arizona, where there was redneck justice. Somehow nobody got up to check their cameras or check when things went off. There was no car alarms went off. It was kind of crazy. But I think it's kind of crazy people leave their cars unlocked with guns and laptops in them. So I find that kind of crazy, but there you go. I'm going to try to catch up here. Just got my shirt. Yeah, Trevor said there was a weird delay in the shirts and different things. And he said it was showing everything was being processed. So it was all he could do. Of course, I wore the same stupid shirt. Because Trevor said everything was going to be good. I would have wore a black shirt so I could have stood up and seen the lettering better. But of course, now I'm going to try to lean down into this, make my head look like an egg. That was talking about the Don's going to Garden Valley. At one time was Garden Valley. Don's theory. The Don's. I don't think the Don's had a theory. It had been a well-known place. Cattle. They used to bring the cattle in there. It has a big water tank up there. There was a Mormon group, Latter-day Saints group, that farmed up in there for a while. Obviously, the Hohokam had a village up in there. So it was an area that had some water tanks, and they used for branding and stuff, I'm sure. And because of all that, it was a great place to go up and turn around. Had some ruins. Use it as a turnaround point. The cattlemen used it, and it was known as Indian Gardens back then. And then the Garden Valley name came more modern. I think that's. You're totally making me want a cig. Well, there you go. I'm sorry. I apologize. I can't. And the best cigarette when the weather's nice and cool and it's nice out. Oh, neighbor's dog's barking. Greetings from North Korea. Wow, that's a long way. If there was a door prize for a person on the other side of the world, it would pretty much be you. That is about the other side of the world, North Korea. So, can't send anyone any cigarettes though. Mine got here. Man, we were buffering occasionally though. I can't do nothing about that. I'm outside. Satellites and are touching me. It is what it is. Busy week. Crazy Jake. Yeah, Crazy Jake. I think during the era when he was being indicted and investigated, you could literally have a Crazy Jake story every day for a month or so, because that was pretty big deal locally in the papers. He got to be kind of the anti-star. So there you go. Terry still wants a cigarette. Yes, people here. Greg Davis loves Garden Valley, you can tell. Greg just likes being in the mountains. But it's an easy hike, it's a nice one. A lot of history. Got to spend a lot of time. And some of those areas, you got to think Greg's at the age where he's getting to do memories. So he's getting to remember back in the, you know, the 50s and stuff, and being out with his uncle and his dad and brother. Hello from Spokane, Washington. Well, I know where Spokane is. Okay. And said hi. I said hi back. I'm pretty sure the last time you said hi. I don't know. Just east of St. Louis, near. Okay. So, yeah, again, I wore the wrong shirt for reading this because I thought we were in the clear. I don't really pick out a wardrobe. I just grab a shirt. So there's like a shirts, and then sometimes the reason you see me wearing the same shirt so much is it's the one on the end, and it's just what I grab and pull off. So that was today's thing. Is I ran around and then had a little time before we were going live, and I just go in and grab a shirt. Trevor says I should also wear pants when I do this. So sure hope you can get back to your location in the mountains. Miss those. Well, speaking of that, I tried to get a hold of Frank for the last 2 weeks. Got a hold of him finally. I left a message. I left messages. He called. I was out of the truck, and I heard my phone go off at my truck. So I had to walk back to my truck. So I walked back to my truck. Saw it was Frank. He left a message. He says he knows I'm doing fine because of my stupid videos. And he's doing okay, but he doesn't like all the scammer calls and that stuff, so he just turns his phone off all the time and just calls people back when he checks his phone. And then I've left a message or two since then and called several times, and I can't get a hold of him again. So getting him on the phone right now, getting him in the mountains, getting him to go out is tough, but now getting him on the telephone is very tough. But he's watching the video, so hopefully he hears this, and he gives me a designated time. He texts me and gives me a designated time that we can possibly do so. So, I don't know. So, hope he's well, but, you know, again, there's a couple things we wanted to do, and then whenever I got the time, I can't get a hold of him. I inherited a certified painting named Superstition. I always wanted to locate the exact area in the painting. Well, you'd have to post it, take a picture, post it somewhere. There's Superstition Mountain site. There's the Superstition Mountain Treasures site. Post it somewhere on one of those, and someone probably can tell you. I have one that artist painted, and I don't know where it's at. It's in my house. My mom got it. It was painted for my mom and dad, and it hung in the living room. And when my dad passed away, I just said, I'm going to take that. And I didn't even know it was Superstition Mountains. I liked the painting. So I took the painting and I took it down, and then I looked on the back, and on the back it said Superstition Mountains. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, that makes sense why I probably like it, and it's hanging in my house. But I've never looked to see where it was. I kept looking at it and thinking I didn't really catch. I didn't know those. Okay, so I watched your Spiral Staircase Mine video. There was several of them, and the one where you and Frank were in a wash looking for Tom Collenborn's gold nugget. Well, that was up by First Water. That was in the First Water Creek area. No, out by Massacre Ground. Never mind, I'm sorry. Yeah, the one where we find the geocache and someone's cremated remains, and we did find a couple little mining camps and a bunch of stuff. But yeah, that one. That was a while back too. yeah, we spent a good day. We actually spent several days out, different areas out there filming. I think only some of it we released. Again, like Trevor said, at the Dons, which I don't usually post much video from the Dons. I told Trevor the only thing I want you to film is film the hike, and if there's some interesting stuff on the hike, film that and maybe put that together. But I said, otherwise, I like Rendezvous was well before I ever did a TV show or anything, and I kind of consider it a separate thing, and I don't ever want to make profit off the Rendezvous. So my whole attitude with the Rendezvous is, I'll sit down and do an interview for Terry Carter or someone, and I've done that with other people. I might take some pictures. This year I took 0 pictures, but I rarely will film anything unless it's something very separate, like the year that Frank and myself and DeLille were there, and Woody, you know, and we're all sitting around talking, and we filmed a couple little short things together. But really, for the most part, I really don't use the Rendezvous as a platform. So because of that, you know, it's just my thing. Anybody else does it, there's not a problem. I know most of the guest speakers would prefer not to be filmed and that stuff put out there publicly. So what happened to Crazy Jake's camp? Which one? There's several of them. There's the one that was at the bottom of Squaw, one up in Squaw, a couple on Peters Mesa. He had different camps. So they're all still there. I think the area where he used to hitch the horses is still there. You can see where some of that is and where they used to dig in, but most of the camps are all there. I mean, Caballo's camp is still there. Ayler's cabin got pulled down, but you can still see where everything was. So most of the old camps are still there. It's just his camp kind of dissipated once he was gone, because once he wasn't convincing people to go out there and give him their money and them to expect to find these rich mines, that was kind of the end of that. So it was that was what happened to his camps and his people. And then plus he was in prison, so that kind of makes it a little more difficult. It wasn't like he was the cartel and he could do all that stuff. So today we are brought to you by Taco Bell. This is Taco Bell, see? I had Taco Bell. Taco Bell in Arizona is different. It's good. It's pretty good. I don't know why. Anywhere else I get Taco Bell, it tastes different. I don't know why. It doesn't make sense, because you would think all Taco Bells should taste the same menus. I remember when Taco Bell only had the tacos, tostadas. I don't even know, did they have burritos? And they had drinks. That was it. There was no menu to Taco Bell. It was very simple. I know they had tostadas and tacos. I don't think I ever ate the burritos. And they were all shaped like little Spanish missions. And the best one in Phoenix was the one at 51st Avenue in Northern. Was one of the best ones. It was right beside the mortuary, across from Valley West Mall. It was one of the best Taco Bells around. So, drink to Mr. Bob Ward. Well, now I don't need to drink, but I will again. Every drink should be to Bob Ward. But again, yeah, I don't know why if I'm somewhere else and I get Taco Bell, it's like, wow, because I'll go, oh, you know, do you guys have enchiladas? Yeah, okay, I'll have an enchilada and nachos, and then I'll be like, man, this don't taste right. So I don't know what it is, because everything should be kind of the same, you would think. But then again, I mean, look at pizza places. Every place you get a pizza, the pizza tastes different. So I guess there's something to that. National chains, whatever. But I don't know what Taco Bell does different in Arizona. I don't know, it's something different. Okay, hey Tony. Okay, well, we're talking to Tony. But it's been another quiet week as far, I've been busy. I talked, well, Gold Hunter's not on here, I didn't see him. But I talked to Larry, and I talked to Frank briefly. And I didn't really talk to anybody else. I was in and out working. I didn't talk to really anybody. So it was it's odd. It's that time of year you don't hear from it. And I think about it and go like, oh, I got to call Shoes. I got to do this. I got to do that. Because it's, you know, not just because of Christmas, but I haven't called somebody for a while. And it's just been kind of quiet. So, and I was going through a bunch of other stuff, so not like life stuff, but going through part of the collection and putting things together and trying to decide how to make things easier to go through, and talking to Trevor and Tyler about how to do a mass upload of a bunch of material. And next year going into Chasing Legends on Mondays of how we want to do the next run, because it doesn't have any seasons, even though it will have another season, 6th or 7th season, but it just keeps going and going. It never stops. We've never taken a day off that. So I think we're having a sidebar communication here. No. When they stop putting them in gas stations, just be careful. But yeah, so everything tastes different eventually. So, and if you ever find what you really, really, really like, they always discontinue it. So, and I haven't seen. See, I've been out pretty much every day, and my thing always in December is McRibs, and I always like getting McRibs, and I haven't seen any signs for McRibs, so I don't know if McDonald's had the McRib this year. So that's about one of the few things I'll go to McDonald's for, is the McRib around Christmas. Worked those as a kid, so they started putting them in gas stations. So Taco Bells and gas stations, huh? Is that what we're talking about? I don't know. Wow, we've almost been out doing this for 30 minutes. It goes fast when we're out doing this. Do you have unreleased vids that you are building back? Because, well, there's a lot of stuff. What happens is we're doing something, and then I just tell Trevor, that's unrelated, don't use that. And then we were pushing to do another thing and investigating an area, and we're looking at how to kind of continue to do that. And the next one, I think we did several videos, so it would have been like part 1, 2, 3, and then we were supposed to go out with Frank, and Frank never made it, so that we stopped. We were waiting for Frank, and then there was another thing we were supposed to do with Frank, so we stopped. We had a video. So there's stuff like that we just kind of like, okay, the next thing we should do is take Frank out and go out there with Frank and look at it. And there's the one where it was Randy Wright, myself, Trevor, and Randy's son were out. And that was, we filmed out there and did quite a bit. And so my next step was, well, let's bring Frank out and continue this. And we had some footage without just Trevor and myself out there. It was weird. It's because we kind of gotten to where we wanted things to kind of have some continuity and context of telling a story. And then that became difficult when certain people wouldn't pick up their phone and we couldn't get out. And then it was just like, and then Frank even said, let's just go out and treasure hunt and do stuff. Okay, fine, let's just do that. And we take pictures and Trevor will film stuff regardless. And that kind of like, he's not answering his phone, so we weren't doing that. So then we go out, and then Trevor, like, you know, we go do stuff, and Trevor will film, and then I'll look at it, and he'll ask, what do you think about that? And I'll be like, it's kind of like what he said at the rendezvous. It's a bunch of people walking. And I said, yeah, you know. And so then Trevor will say, well, let's go out, take a hike, and go out all day. And then we'll film, and you can talk about the history of different areas, and we'll do that. And I said, that's fine. We did that early on. That was one of the first things we did. There's those ones where we went down into Brush Corral and out Black Mesa and Garden Valley. I don't think we filmed at Garden Valley. I think we filmed everywhere, and then we were just done toast by the time we got to Garden Valley, and he didn't film anymore. But I said, that's fine, you know. But I said, again, it's just going to be us walking, doing different stuff. But if you want to do that, that's fine. So never know what you're going to find and explore, or to show people certain pieces of history. But again, it's about the availability of people. I'm usually pretty easy about getting out there. It's just getting the rest of them to go out there and do it. McRib on here in Washington. Yeah, this time of year, I know they aren't the greatest thing in the world, and they're sloppy. But I also like onions. So I like barbecue and I like onions. So they kind of They're like the worst possible garbage sandwich, but I still love them. I know 3 Red Hill in Hewitt. What are the other 3? Those are the 3 Red Hills north of Weaver's Needle. There's 3 Red Hills out by the box, LaBarge box out behind there. So I know those 2. I'm trying to think. So there's, and there's places that people say 3. I know there's one in Fish Creek Canyon, but it's not, they're hills, but they're not big hills, but there's 3 Red Hills there. Place that's, I was told, someone called 3 Red Hills. So there's different ones. I don't know if they're all mapped the same though. Will Woody be making any trips with you? No, he won't be able to make any trips into the mountains. He can make trips out by the mountains. He's relegated, like a lot of people are, to driving somewhere. He can take the side-by-side, which is annoying because you're really not going anywhere in the mountains if you're on the side-by-side. You're just going down along the side of the road. But he does that. But that's about the extent of what he can do. You got to remember, you're talking about 2 guys that are getting close to 80 and want them, and they're not mountain men, so you want them to go up in the mountains, and that's kind of risky for them. So it's different. I think people have that wrong perception of, do you really want to kind of put someone in that position? So no. When we did Legends, you have to remember, I was 50 and I worked outside all day, and I've been working outside in the sun all day and everything, and the rest of those guys weren't that person. So not only just the time in the mountains, but just what I did for a living and all the time I spent outside. So there's a whole different perception of like, well, all these guys, no, those guys weren't kind of guys that went out and put in 10, 12 miles in the mountains. They weren't those guys. They never were. So wanting to go do things, it's rough for those guys at times. I have to watch what we do and how close I can get them and what we can do. I always want to do stuff with Woody. We can talk mountains, my friend. Then we can always talk mountains. But it's, Woody gets his spots where he wants to go, and it's usually someplace that it's, in particular, it's closer to the roads and places and where there's traffic and a lot of people, and you've been there 20, 30 times, but he's just trying to enjoy life, and seeing us just sitting around just talking about life is not what people want to see. So it's, I have the perfect video for our Garden Valley. In fact, you're reporting on the real LDM in Garden Valley? Okay. Man, a lot of work. Every minute you film just takes as much time to bounce down. Well, now the download, it's the download when we're doing 4K, so that takes time. But it's just, you got to bring a bunch of batteries, and you got to go out and film, and then you got to go through everything, and you want to film everything. And my big thing about a lot of this stuff, what we do, is continuity. So I tell Trevor, once you start the camera, until we all decide to stop, don't stop the camera. Make sure it never cuts or breaks off too much, because I don't want anybody to say, oh, that didn't really happen, or this didn't really happen, or it's editing or something like that. So, which is boring. It's harder. If you watch a TV show, you're going to notice everything goes clip, 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 clip. It's not more than 5 or 6 seconds before they're on to another scene or a different angle. But we're trying to document something, so it's 2 different ways of doing something. So we're not trying to make television programming. We just started trying to put stuff together. Okay, he'll know after the location. The message was rescinded there. Hola. There we go. There's Dallas. What's up, Dallas? There's Robert. Dallas having a sidebar conversation. But yeah, there's so many different places in the mountains that have similar names. And it was like, I think someone was posting on Facebook about the different canyons and labeling them. I can't even tell you how many names of canyons. Every canyon had a name, and then it had a common name, and then a forestry service name, And you start to try to keep track with that stuff. And back when I was going in with Randy in the early 2000s, I always talked to Randy about that stuff, that there was so many different names for every canyon, every side canyon, every little spot, every hill. Somebody had a name for something, and they didn't cross-reference well, and a lot of them basically kind of like didn't make sense. I don't know if they were just people's camps or this or that, or why just everybody wanted to put a name on everything. So that was, and Glenn said hi again. I know you've said hi like 3-4 times, and I've said hi to you, and you continue to say hi. So when it comes to because of the waltz clue, I think people kept naming places Three Red Hills. Yeah, fortunately, we don't have, a lot of the canyons were just named by the Forestry Service. I always liked sitting around with Tom, and sometimes he'd tell you what some of the older names were, but you got to remember, Waltz's time, outside of Weaver's Needle, and they were the Superstition Mountains, and briefly they were the, what were they called? They changed the name Coronado Mountains for a minute, and then they went back to Superstition Mountains. But they would, they always move names around, and they've done it since I've lived here. Not just in the Superstitions, but we have Piestewa Peak, but everybody still called it Squaw Peak, and I don't know why. And because, they made a big deal about changing it, and all the maps, it doesn't say Squaw Peak anywhere anymore. And it's not that hard of a thing, but it's still, it's ingrained in my head. It's still Squaw Peak. So, I don't know. I still want to find a map with all the names of everything in the soups. I don't know if you can. I mean, Tom might have had something, a master, several different maps with different stuff. Because his would have where camps were, where people's camps were. You can find a little bit of it, the one he didn't mind making public, in Helen Corbin's books. I think it was on the inside of the covers on Curse of the Dutchman's Gold, and I think it's like a 2-page spread in the Bible, which is probably one of the most interesting things in that whole book that we'd never seen or heard about really too much. But that was nice. But I got to see, he had more than one map. He had several different maps. Some were the canyons and camps, some were just different things that he'd found and stuff. But yeah, that was, to me, that was always fast. Oh, jeez. I was going sideways there. But that was always interesting to me because, I always like to learn kind of that. What was that? Well, I don't know. And, but you kind of like to know if that was stuff. I'm not trying to do that, sorry. How long did Waltz think it would take for Julia to recover the cat? Well, that's the thing I said. That's why I always wondered if that was in one of the notes or some scribblings of Jim Barks that John Spangler had. Since Jim Barks spoke to Julia and Reinhardt the most, it had a series of interviews with them. If they had conveyed, because you would think that would be on the top of his mind. So you guys were going to leave Phoenix. How long did he say you were going to be in the wagon? How long after you left the wagon were you going to ride in with Reinhardt Hawking? Were you going to stay one night? Were you staying a night and then the next day going up to the cache? Was it just turn around? Was it same day? Was it not same day? What they said that he was, Reinhardt was going to carry the camp kit, but if it was just him carrying a backpack with some food and some pots or something for them to eat, it wasn't going to be a multiple day trip. But that would tell us a lot because horses, wagon went a little quicker, but they weren't going to be gone that long. And she was having to close the shop, or someone was running the shop while she was gone, and it would be curious that they were all gone. So I couldn't believe they were going to be gone like a week or two. I think they were going to be gone a matter of just days. And we have no reference to any of it. And that's always what I wanted to see. I wanted to see how long was it going to be, and then you could circle in areas and look at routes. Were they coming in on the southern end? Or were they coming up by the first water side? Or, as some people say, the Hewitt. But I would think the Hewitt would take far longer because they would have to loop around the mountains, or were they coming in and going by the quarter circle U and heading for Hewitt? We have no idea because none of that information was ever revealed. How many how many stories are there of troopers to soldiers finding? Well, if you're talking about like the lost soldiers' gold and the lost Canadian and French, yeah, there's several of those. There's one for South Mountain, there's one for the Estrellas, there's one for the Superstitions. That was a popular name for the soldiers, and we've even talked about, like the troopers one I just did is another variation on that, of troopers or soldiers finding something and then it's lost. So that, it was a common name. I'm sure it happened quite a bit. When I was looking through, I have a book that's when they were chasing down Geronimo, and I can't remember what the book's called, but it's the diaries, and it's the soldiers' diaries and stuff, and it talks about them, and when they would make camps, that they would always have a group go off and pan and go look for gold in the area, because that was always important to the U.S. military as well, is to look around, and the soldiers too, to look around, see if they could find any places with gold. So that I always found interesting, is every camp they did that, and I'll have to next time bring that book out, but it's a cool book. I got it, I'm trying to remember where I picked it up at. Where do you think the board house was at Peralta? It was the quarter circle U. I know people sometimes struggle with that, but it's been there. But yes, the quarter circle U, the Cavanis place was there when Waltz was in. And we don't know when Waltz went through, but we know it would be one of the earliest buildings, functional buildings. And Matt Cavanis had that, and his wife was there with the kids when he was gone and after they got divorced. And as well, he had built a second house east of there. Nobody's not quite sure the exact location. That was called as the Goat House or Goat Ranch. And that's where he had a bunch of goats that he milked. So it was the Milk Ranch, and which confuses people, but yes, there was the Goat Ranch. We went out and did a video out there looking around for it with someone else. It was before Frank and Woody and them, and I don't even know what happened to that footage. It might have been cell phone footage or something, but that was when Trevor would have been not around either for that trip. But I remember we looked for it, and then I went out again, and then when we were filming Legends, I suggested we go out in that area and Frank do it, and Woody and Magnuson look around that area, and we never made it there, which doesn't really matter because we found those pit houses and those ruins, Hohokam ruins, and they didn't film that or use any of that either. So they wouldn't have probably used any of the Dutchman stuff either that we found. So that was kind of one of those disappointments of you know, hey, look, there's stone tools on the ground, and look, there's pit houses, there was a village here, and all this stuff, and Walt said there was ruins around, and da-da-da-da, and they didn't even want to incorporate that in any way, and I was like, but this is pretty cool, this is a stone axe, this is, you know, and they didn't care, and then I wanted to go southeast from there, out to that area, and say, hey, why don't we look for where this other Milk Ranch, you know, thing was, which is not necessarily a clue, but was a later kind of thing reference. And I said, why don't we go down there and work back to the quarter circle U and look for anything structural that might have been here back then, since nobody alive seems to remember it. And I think Tom said there was, you could tell kind of where it was at one time, but he didn't remember where it was. I think that was, but anyways, I was like, hey, why don't we just walk back, because we can walk back from the fence line and where the water is, the water tank is there. They had zero interest. They just wanted to get back. They were sunburnt and not in a happy mood. I guess Tom, yourself, have known places you would rather not share with John for good reason. Yes, and Tom, I've always kept my word about certain things that Tom said, just don't talk about them, and there's other people too, and we talk about those things. there was locations and certain things that he just thought should be left alone. And I won't say what they are, but they usually were investigated and documented, and then he felt they just needed to be left alone because there was nothing Dutchman, there was no reason for anybody to mess with them, and his worry was that they would be defaced, or they would just be trashed, and he just hated to see that. So I've always kept my word on that. So there was certain things that I was given knowledge and information on, and then there was a couple things that I was able to talk more freely because I asked him, I said, is there a problem with if I share this or that? And he was like, no, you can share that. Well, to what point? So that was kind of good, but there was a number of things he found in the mountains and I never spoke about, and I'm sure other people similar. So sometimes we talk, and I know people who know where certain things are that I don't know where they're at. And I'll ask them general questions about it, and so I know the history better. But I don't think I've ever asked of like, where is it? Tell me where it's at. I can figure the general area, but I also sometimes am like, okay, I know the story. I don't need to go figure it out. So I always wanted to find that alcove or wherever it was that had the kiln in the back, that had the natural flow of air that Tom said was like some sort of natural kiln or furnace by Bluff Springs. That was one, because he talked about it publicly and he did an article on it, but I could never find it, and I don't think anybody else I know of ever has found it. That was one that I always wanted to know, because I had a good picture in my mind what it would be like, but I never found that. There was a couple things that were long gone, and I think that's why Tom didn't want people to reveal spots, because the other problem was once they're revealed, something happens to them. And think about is the old, what he called it, a sheep herder's place up on over north of Burns Ranch, out by Bob Ward's cabin. And Tom always talked about it and said there was more of a structure or something much cooler. I think, is Amazon coming? Nope. They've decided to move on. Anyways, Tom talked about it, but Chuck Crawford went out with a bulldozer and destroyed it because they all thought it was a Spanish mission, and it wasn't. And it's, you can see where they dug. You can't see the place anymore because of all the damage they caused to it, and that's a problem too. It's getting dark. Thinking about side of Weaver's Needle. Well, it could be anywhere. I mean, it could be up on the Dayside Cliffs for all we know. I mean, I always keep that open mind to that. Now, the area that people have publicly pounded the crap out of, I don't know. And there's certain areas that I've been in so many times and people have metal detected, and I've looked around. But how many people don't know about on the far side of the hills by Garden Valley, all the mines there? There's a bunch of hidden mines up in there that I don't think most people know about. And so, but how long, that's the key to me, is how long was it going to take them to go certain places and all. So, there's got to be some good for Fort McDowell stories. I'm sure I'll get to those, but how many of them actually filed a claim? So there's a lot of claims filed in the mountains. And that's one of the problems, is the claims were filed sometimes with the county, and then they're misfiled. Randy Wright found about Randy found them, they were completely disorganized. He was looking for something completely different and ran into a bunch of stuff from Walter Gassler under different fictitious names. And he found them and brought them to me, and then we went looking for some of these prospects. One of them was a tunnel. It was at least 8, 10, 12 feet that he'd found this old tunnel, and we went looking for it and couldn't find it, but he'd placed a claim on it, and we could never locate it. We were very interested in it, and for a lot of different reasons. And unfortunately, Randy, when he was moving and other things, lost all the paperwork, and I've never found the paperwork again. I remember seeing it, so the paperwork was there. But it was one of Walter Gassler's mines. So a lot of people filed a lot of things, but they'd file under different names. Other than Dick Holmes, anyone else try to follow? I don't think Holmes ever followed Waltz. I don't. I think that was made up too. I don't think anybody had a clue about Waltz because Grijalva thought he was poor and didn't think he had a pot to piss in. Julia's her brother-in-law, Steingart, Emil Thomas's brother-in-law and his sister. The brother-in-law was very surprised to find that there might have been something to it all with Waltz. Waltz was very private, so a lot of people that knew him and actually really knew him were very stunned to find out, wow, there might have been a mine. This might have actually been true. They thought some of it was just BS after he died. But I think for Steingart, I think it was Julia, because he knew Julia, and Julia wouldn't have given up on everything and done what it was, and he probably had some relationship with her after Emil left and talked to her and kind of knew. So I think most people had no clue. And then you've got to remember, when you see the first articles about Waltz, they're generally kind of like, they called him the wrong names, they called him, different things. They said there's a woman who, his mistress, his housekeeper, all these stories. None of it was very accurate. When you look at Jim Bark's version of it, it's pretty much on tail with what was. But they had Julia like, oh, she did, completely different wacky story in the newspapers. So I think most people didn't catch on to that stuff till later. I think Bicknell got what he got and was a newspaper reporter and reported it the way a newspaper reporter reports it. I know there's a lot of people that love Bicknell's stuff. I found him being a newspaper guy, and he liked to go out exploring, which you got to remember, people back then loved doing that shit. So I think Bicknell liked going out in the mountains and doing stuff, but he was also very wealthy at that point. So I think it was kind of like, I like going out and treasure hunting and stuff. And it's kind of funny for a guy that had all the money, and he was a newspaper reporter, and he had a lot of access to people and stuff. Really didn't give us much information, but yeah, he was looking for the lost soldier's gold, which he thought was in the Eastern superstitions. And if you go carefully through stuff, I mean, Bark thought the soldiers, two soldiers, and Joe Deering and Waltz might be the same place. But then that's also failing to take into account that, as far as the Peralta story goes, and the Apache stories goes, was there was a number of different mines they were working, and the Dutchman was just one of those mines. There's Gil Gold prospecting in San Antonio, Texas. Every day is a golden day. Well, there you go. Happy holidays, Sky Cloud. He popped in. There you go. But Texas, big state. Big gross national product out of Texas. A lot of businesses. So, big place. I don't mind visiting Texas, but I'll never want to drive across it again. Man, that is a big state, and there's a lot of nothing out there. I think you all looking in the wrong spot. Can we stop by McDonald's? There you go. Said hi. Another person says hi. Well, at least it's someone different. Hi. I am talking west of the Super Big, the Red Hills. Well, there's people that think it's the Bulldog Mine. There's people that think it's in South Mountain. There's people that think it's in Black Canyon and New River. There's a lot of people that have a lot of different theories. I know one guy really believed it was in the Sierra Estrellas, and because of Montezuma Point, and there's some silver mines up in there, and there's a lost Frenchman's gold or French soldiers' gold story there, and thought that people were confused, but Waltz could only sit on the patio of his house and point, east one way, and take away the airport and everything. He was looking out at the superstitions, and he said that's in those Superstition Mountains. So that's one of the key things. You have to completely get rid of every clue attached to that part of the story if you want to negate and take out the fact that he says it's out there in those Superstition Mountains. Now you got to take everything directly, everything he could have been pointing at and discussing with them, and they went immediately to superstitions. Jim Bark and Sim Zeeley did. So if those guys are completely wrong and that's made up, then every clue that you're talking about otherwise, Three Red Hills, this, that, is made up too. So none of it is true. So Yeah, I believe Walt's pointed east from his property, which would have faced back then, and you could have seen the superstitions, and that's how that went. I'm here. There you are. Yes, you are. You're here. Well, you're there. I'm here. Can you hunt there? Can you hunt there as an alien? Someone from Europe. Yeah, you can. I don't know, like, hunting license if it's more expensive. I don't know if you could file a claim, but you can always get someone to file a claim. I don't know. Yeah, because you could always find someone, not just to partner with, but someone that would, as a natural citizen or a citizen of the U.S., to file for the claim for you. Claims are usually pretty general in essence, so if you're putting the claim markers and everything in, you could probably file something and use that person. Like I said earlier, there's a lot of claims that you go through it, and you have to put in some research to realize that isn't that name. It's one of the tough things because there's tens of thousands of claims, and then you realize, oh, most people weren't very convenient. There was one Dutch hunter that kind of foiled his own story because what he named his claims, and it was obvious, and his name was on the claims, but it kind of hurt his backstory on some other things he was bullshitting on. But people sometimes name things mysterious things, and they use fictitious names, or they use their wife's sister's name or their wife with her maiden name. They do different things to kind of hide it. So there's a lot of those. So you go through and then you start going, oh, this is because of the name. You realize, oh, they named 5 mines these names, like the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but this one has a completely different name on it, but it's filed the same date. So you realize they wanted that one out of the public eye more. Said hi. Okay, that was that one there. And Major Cavendish is still here, but he's there. I don't think he really understands how this works. Did Waltz that you can get to his mind and well, that's one of the things we don't know, and we don't know how. You got to remember he hadn't been there for 10 years. And let's face it, if I go off to work and it's a light day and there's nothing going on and I'm having a good time, I can stop and have lunch and take lunch and kick back. And if I'm working definitely out in Carefree Cave Creek or out in the open desert, I'll take a lot longer than I should because I'm just enjoying the day. So was he in a hurry at times? Was he being stealthy? Julian Reinhardt, was he going in a different route that was the quickest route? Because after 10 years, he was going to make one trip back out of there. I mean, you got to look at it this way, which came with these stories of all the people in town suddenly saying, people used to try to follow him in the mountains. Because remember, it wasn't just Holmes, it was all these people would try to follow him in. And then everybody was surprised that, hey, Waltz had a mine? That doesn't reconcile very well. So how long was he gone? How long would it take him? Which routes did he take? And he could have taken different routes, but did anybody even realize what he's doing? Did he do this before he really settled in Phoenix? So we don't know any of it. I have a feeling a lot of that information, I would find it hard. Jim Bark was he was a good businessman and very, very precise that he would not have asked certain questions like that. Because of that, I always wonder what's out there, and that is probably one of the features of certain things, of areas we don't really think of, and the Spanglers or whoever has that material just doesn't want it released in the public. That's all I can think of on that. Because why else would that information not be out there? You are going Sylvester Stallone from Rambo. Last Blood. What? You're going Sylvester Stallone. Rambo, Last Blood. I don't know why. Am I about to kill a bunch of members of the cartel with my underground tunnels? I'm not quite sure about that one. I know the movie. I'm going to pull someone's heart out. Cool. We are almost done for the day. Almost out of cigarettes, too. So, Sorry, didn't have any to spare. See, we wouldn't have had enough to spare to get through the whole hour and whatnot. It's been a lot of traffic, but nobody's called, and who knows? If you want to watch this live on my security cameras, you can too, because I didn't turn the security cameras off, so I've recorded myself out here the entire time. I was looking up just to see. It's kind of ridiculous, but I forget those are there. I don't know if anybody else has that problem. I forget it's out there, and then I go in and try to figure out what was setting it off, and then I realize, oh, it was stupid me. Did the Martin family get any notes or manuscripts from Herman? I don't think Herman wrote anything or kept anything out. They got his shotgun, which was the shotgun that Reinhardt killed himself with. They had that. They still do. There was a fire and the stock burned up, but they had that. I don't know what else they got from his house. I know he had a lot of books and stuff. I always thought, they always say, you know a man by the books on his bookshelf, which would make people say that I'm insane because of just the crazy amount of reading and everything that I read, because it's just all over the place. But I always was curious, what were the books that Herman read? What kind of books did he read? Was he a fiction, nonfiction guy? What was he collecting? That would have been cool to know what was in his library, because they said there was a lot of books at his cabin. And I've never heard about any of the books or anything. I just know I saw a thing about the personal inventory, and I knew, because the Martins had 2 rifles. They had Revis's rifle, and they had Herman's shotgun, which was the same shotgun as Reinhardt had. I think there was 2 shotguns, and one of them was Reinhardt's, and they had that still. It was the one that Reinhardt committed suicide with. But I know that, but I don't know of anything since then, and don't think any of them ever made it to a museum or anything. Wayne, have you ever filed a claim? Don't answer if you're not comfortable, just curious. We filed claims. Not in my name. I don't file anything in my name. And that was something that I was always happy with, but then I became more happy with after the TV show, because you lose your privacy. And yeah, it wouldn't be hard to find any claims under my name. That was because I was like, well, what do I do? And then I was like, someone told me, and I said, and then also doing research, I realized, yeah, a lot of people messed around with that stuff. So, yeah, just put it that way, yes. And then I also told Frank and Woody, I said anything we would file jointly on, because there was one up north we were going to do, break some ground on some gold, and Frank talked me out of it. Someone wanted to let the claim go and was going to let it go to us, and we were going to go up there because Woody had equipment. It was halfway in between all of us, and then I thought Woody could come down and we could get Shoes involved and break some ground and see what there was there. But it had an old tunnel on it, and that becomes a load mine, and Frank said that becomes a completely different thing than a placer and digging up the ground, so we'd be responsible for the load mine. And so Frank talked me out of it. So I never even really did much to it to check it out. I went up once, took some samples, didn't find anything, but thought there had been gold out there, and it seemed promising, but we never developed or got into it. And that was a discussion again you have, is like, okay, it can't be under Wampler or Augustine and Tuttle. If you put those 3 names on a claim, everybody's going to be out there when we're not. So that was a problem. So you generally try to put it under someone else's name that maybe is not known. But I know people don't always even use the real name, because there was claims with Alan Tree's name, and Tree was not his actual last name. So some of them are with his last name, Havorka, but there are claims with Alan Tree on them, and that would not have been correct because his last name wasn't Tree. That was a nickname. So there you go. Either or. But I think, as far as valid claims, there's Zane in his ugly sweater. If he watches this, it wasn't really ugly. I'm sure he's wearing a Christmas sweater going out, and I'm sure it's because it's an ugly sweater contest, and he doesn't have an ugly sweater, so he has a nice Christmas sweater, and he's wearing that. There you go. So I didn't mean to insult you, Zane. You're very red and green. He's not listening right now. Sometimes people watch our videos and listen, and he's not reacting, so that's a good thing, because he's a good neighbor. So else was supposed to be a friend of Revis, or they knew each other, at least knew each other. So, and that could have been just from time and spending time around the mountains and being old timers. We're besties. Thanks, Wayne. Wishing you the Tuttles a Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to you, everybody. No cigarettes for all of you, though, today. Have a great weekend and Merry Christmas. Yes, everybody have a great weekend. A Merry Christmas. We'll be here after Christmas, so we'll do another live. Hopefully Trevor will figure out this weekend what's going on with the computer. We can get back in the studio. But everybody have a good Christmas, happy holidays, or whatever you celebrate. And if it's nothing at all, just have a great weekend of football, because I believe there's football Christmas Day and Friday and Saturday and Sunday and even Monday. So it might be the 5 days of football for Christmas, but there's supposed to be games every day. So if that's your thing, then you're going to have a great weekend, because you got plenty of things to do, which I enjoy. Let's see. Everybody's got to quit having such long names, because have a great weekend, Michael. So everybody have a great Christmas. I'm going to get out of here. I got a grocery pickup, and then I got to just chill out, eat dinner. I don't have any other plans. Like I'm in a hurry to get out of here. But I'm definitely get out of here for the evening, because it is cooling off. I can feel the cool air coming down. I'm sure the temperature's dropped. I can't check it on my phone, because then you guys would disappear. I got to remember how I think I just hit the X and it all goes away. Are you doing a live next week? Yes, I just said that. I will be doing live next Friday. I have no other plans. Usually around Christmas, just before or after, I try to take one of the weekends and go in the mountains. And I don't know if we will or not. I don't usually announce that, so, but I'll probably be here for live regardless. I'm warm and toasty. Okay. All right. There you go. Here's the Bob Ward, and I'll play those guitars. I will be playing those guitars. My fingernails show you that I'm playing those guitars. Always kept trimmed back on the left hand. Very tight. Very neat. So there you go. Hope everybody has a good Christmas again and has happy holidays. Hope everybody peace on earth and all that stuff whatsoever. But yeah, maybe we'll shout something out Christmas Day or Christmas Eve, even though Christmas Eve is our big Mexican fiesta dinner. So I don't know, maybe we'll send out some pictures. We haven't done pictures and short vids like that kind of stuff, little frivolous things. So maybe over the holidays with Trevor home and on break, teacher's getting a lot of breaks and he's on another break. So next couple of weeks we'll get some content and some stuff done and get ahead of ourselves and have a good time. Well, Robert, good night, and never do it again. Got a Phoenix sunset here in Tortilla Hills. Yeah, it's not breezy enough to be an awesome sunset, but the best ones are during summertime when we got a little monsoon stirring up that dirt in the air. But everybody go out, have a great Christmas, have a happy holidays. Catch us on Chasing Legends on Monday, because Monday will be another episode of Chasing Legends, another thrilling ride through the Southwest treasure stories, or maybe I'll even go somewhere else. There's gotta be a Christmas one. I gotta go through the files. I'll spend a little time tomorrow going through the files, trying to find a Christmas story. That would be a nice one for this next week. I can't promise it because I've never seen a Christmas story like that. But maybe I'll read the night before Christmas. Maybe that'll be what I do for Monday's Chasing Legends, huh? We do actually, and I should post a picture of that, but we have a Grinch outfit, Santa costume. So maybe Trevor and I should do the night before Christmas and costumed up. There you go. Now that I said that, I just think it's a horrible idea. William Glitch, I don't know what that was about. Okay, anyways, I'm going to get out of here because people keep posting and I'll keep trying to read. We'll do that. And there's David Murphy and the Superstitions and Merry Christmases. And then Glenn says LOL. I thought he was going to say hi again. Everybody have a great Christmas. We'll catch you later here, and we'll see you next Friday. Have a good adios. Yes.